if you are struggling, if you are stuck, I can promise you that there is hope, that if you want to change, you can change. Because I believe that every single one of us is far more capable than we allow ourselves to believe. And that right underneath our feet is a vast reservoir of untapped potential, just yearning to be released. And our job is to bring it forth, to release it into the world.
One of the reasons why I am so excited to have this conversation with you is because your life demonstrates that there is no age limit for when you can change, when you can achieve things. And in fact, I would love to have you read the post that you put out that I think is so inspiring.
So this was 6 years ago. I didn't reach my athletic peak until I was 43. I didn't write my first book until I was 44. I didn't start my podcast until I was 45. At 30, I thought my life was over. At 52, I know it's just beginning. Keep running, never give up, and watch your kite soar.
What does that mean to you?
To me, it means that change is always possible. And I think that we put all of this pressure on ourselves. We are in a hurry all the time to get to some place. And we're indoctrinated into that at a very young age, from the beginnings of school where we're chasing grades and, trying to get to the next level. There's always some sort of goal that we're chasing or some gold star that we're grabbing for. And we're measuring our self-worth against the extent to which we're keeping up with our peers. And so this race begins before our brains are, even close to being formed. And we carry it through our entire life, putting pressure on ourselves, always believing that we're behind and we have to catch up, or we're just never going to get, like, quote unquote there. And I think that's a real violence that we do, this socially imposed violence. And in my experience, yes, life is short. We have one precious life. We should all, devote ourselves to making the most of it. But life is also long, and we're not in a race. So stop measuring yourself against all these other people and figure out who you want to be, what it is that you want to do, and start taking those little baby steps towards it. And it will lead you in a direction that might take longer than other people. But in my experience, that's okay. And this is a tweet that I sent out now 6 years ago. And I don't know if I would say I'm still at the beginning, but I'm not nearly at the end right now, and I'm still. But you're
at the beginning of something.
We're always at the beginning of something. Growth, change, evolution, transformation. This is a lifelong path that we're on. So there's always something to learn. There's always a way to grow.
Well, and
the practice of forgiveness is a hard one, isn't it? Because
we've all got people in our lives that we think might have wronged us or done something to us which has caused us pain.
Constantly.
And almost the way that we create our own perception of justice is by holding the grudge.
Yeah. Now, why do we do that? That's the question. Is do we think that if we let go of the grudge, we have let the other person get away with it?
That's how it kind of feels, right?
Wouldn't you say that by holding the grudge, they've got away with it? Because you're the one suffering. They've really won. They're winning in each moment. Because you're holding on to that. In Buddhism, there's a teaching that says it's like holding on to a piece of hot metal or holding a hot coal in your hand, and it's just burning you. So if I'm holding the grudge, they have absolutely got away with it because they are the thing they did, which was one thing, maybe. I am now constantly hurting, and they're absolutely the winner. So I wonder if we assume, I think we do assume that forgiveness is a kind of giving up, even the word forgive, the give in the word. So it sounds like we're taking a weaker position, we're giving up, we're sort of surrendering. But I think forgiveness is a strength or a power, and it's actually nothing to do with the other person. You're not going to necessarily write them a letter and say, I've forgiven you. But you're freeing yourself. You're dropping your burden. Because that rage is toxic and that hurt is toxic. But it's so hard to let go of it. And people can say, let go, and you just want to slap them in the face because what? Okay, is that easy? I'm just going to let go. It's not that easy. It's bloody hard. But meditation gives you the tools. Partly because meditation anyway is helping to loosen up that kind of glue that we have in our minds where we're glued into those feelings. Even just a simple meditation like coming back to the breath is helping you to be less glued into those thoughts and reactions and feelings. So the feeling of rage can start to be less heavy for you.
You've been through several sort of traumatic incidents. Have you forgiven all of those people in your life?
I don't know. I don't know if forgiveness is a big, huge, massive moment or if it's a process. I'm friends with all those people. Very close friends with all those people. And I think, here's what I think. I think I've learned how to forgive the feelings that those incidents gave rise to. Mm-hmm. That to me is much more important than forgiving the people. Mm-hmm. And I think what's also happened to me is I've started to find that the suffering that I experience has some use because it is the thing that you're using for your mental transformation. Mm-hmm. Rinpoche always used to say, suffering is like compost. Compost is made of rotten vegetables. People chuck it away or they know how to make the field grow. And I think it's like that. So with forgiveness, I would say, meditation, but I would say also thinking deeply about the situation. What's really helped me with my dad and with other people is to think about the suffering they were going through that kind of like propelled them to behave the way they've behaved. There's always something, isn't there, in somebody that has made them behave the way they behave. And there's a part of us that gets very indignant and thinks, how dare they? They should know better. Whereas the Buddhist answer would be, well, what do you mean they should know better? They know what they know. They are driven by their own confusion and their own pain. Why do you think they were out to get you? Why do you think they were deliberately out to maliciously get you? Weren't they just caught in their own suffering and you were there? But it's not so much about you.
And so you kind of talked about, how do you stop caring? So like you said, you should care. So I care a lot about what people think, but I don't let it determine my identity. So people say negative things to me all the time. I got reprimanded by the medical board of Massachusetts. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a healthy thing. I think that sometimes in life I make mistakes. And I think sometimes in life I behave in a non-perfect way. And so I value what people think, but I also accept that I'm not perfect, right? So of course I'm going to make mistakes. I try not to let it affect my sense of me. And that's the key differentiator. Because what a lot of people do, this is the biggest mistake I think you can make, is this is what happens, right? People are like, I care so much what people think. So how do I fix that? I stop caring what people think. And then you turn yourself into an asshole. And then that causes lots of problems. And so the problem is either end of the pendulum is a bad idea. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So receive what people think. Also add some context to it. Don't just take it at face value. Where is this person's criticism coming from? 90% of the criticism I get is projection, right? They see in me something that they don't like, but that's not really who I am. But at your core, you're just a regular human being trying to navigate this world, doing the best that you can. In the moment that you accept yourself as that, nothing great, but also nothing terrible, things become way easier.
I raised because I was saying that we were saying that a part of us has to stop caring what people think in order to even pursue this path. I'm assuming when you were studying to become a monk for 7 years, where was that intention or desire coming for you?
Where was the intention to be a monk coming?
Yeah.
It was coming from the ego. Right.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't make sense to the outside person.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's what happened in my life. So went to college. So growing up, I was like kind of gifted. So never really like learned how to study. And then my parents, were like, oh, you have to be Dr. Alok. And then I remember when I was 15 years old, I was at a party one day, and some adult asked me, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a doctor. And they were like, wow, like you're going to be a doctor? Like, that's so amazing, right? And so my ego loved that. I was like, oh my God, I just say I'm going to be a doctor and people are going to be like, wow, you have so much potential. I loved hearing that. And then, but my heart really wasn't in it. It was like ego. So then when like I got to college, I was like, like whatever. And so then what started to happen, something weird happened is I started to fell into video game addiction. I started to feel a lot of shame. And then all of my friends like left me behind. I remember I went to a Christmas party where there was a friend of mine from high school and I hadn't seen her in a few years. And I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I just finished med school. Like I'm going to start ophthalmology residency in like a month. She's like, what are you up to? And I'm like, I'm applying to medical school for the third year in a row. I've been rejected 180 times. What ended up happening is my ego was so low, or like it was so bruised, that I pulled a really interesting trick that happens in spirituality, where I said, I'm going to be not material anymore. All of these materialistic people are chasing these material. You want to be a doctor for money and fame and pride and all of this. I'm going to be better. I'm going to let go of materialism. I'm going to rise above you. I'm going to be Swami. I'm going to be yogi. I'm going to be great. But it was really ego. So that's the original. So I fell in love with it in a genuine way, but also what kept me there was like, this is the way that I win. This is the way that I catch up. This is the way that I impress people. Mm. So it took a lot of...
Both of them were that way, because even the Dr. Lane was
absolutely,
that too.
Right? So that's what's sneaky about the ego. It'll twist and turn.
Yeah.
That sort of happened for a while. Thankfully, I had some really excellent teachers. I did a lot of meditation practice, and I kind of discovered that years later that, oh, this is actually like my ego. So that was my journey. And then I actually like let go of the ego quite a bit. I stopped caring about my grades, and we'll get to that in a second. So I like ended up getting into medical school, and I tried to take my vows. So when I was 21 years old, I went to my guru and I said, I want to become a monk. Like, can I take my vows? And his response was really interesting. He said, becoming a monk is about giving up your life, but you don't have a life worth giving up. Your life is empty. Like, you haven't done anything. What are you giving up? Nothing. It's an escape.
And it gave me a long time to kind of reflect on the formation of the American dream, right? Because we invented and popularized mass media. The ideas that were held in America really swept the world, right? And as you go through LA, you'll meet tons of people who moved here, and they moved to LA because they got swept up in the American dream. But what was that dream? That dream, the Horatio Alger vision, that I can pull myself up by my bootstraps, that I can go out and make this success. It got intertwined with this idea that, what is success? Well, success is more, right? And if you look at the Forbes billionaire list today, the guy worth $1 billion is sad that he's not worth $2 billion. And the guy worth $2 billion is sad that they're not worth $5 billion. And the 5's mad they're not worth $10 billion, because success is defined as how much you have. And there is no end to that. There is no fulfillment to that. In my career, I've been able to work now with hundreds of very successful people. I mean, combined net worth well north of $500 billion. And I continue to hear the same challenges and needs and complaints across the board that sound a lot like the caller who just called in. We coined a name for it internally. We call it the success condition. And it goes something like, you're chasing a dream, building a company, work, toil. The wealth event happens. Look, Ma, I made it, right? Like, oh man, I've done it. I've sold my company. I've, won the lottery, whatever the wealth event is. I went pro, whatever that is in this person's world, I made it. Only to discover that money does not buy happiness. That rich people get sad, depressed, lonely, commit suicide, just like poor people. That all the money in the world, you still only get 24 hours in the day. And if you spend your 24 hours focused on the business, the wealth, the chase, then that comes at the expense, because you only get 24 hours. Necessarily, that comes at the expense of other things and other people that you care about. So, there's no wonder that, these people have these wealth events, and then there's the divorce, then there's the health concerns, kind of all of these things that happen almost like a stereotype, right? You could almost predict it, right? It's just like, oh, you're going to get there, and then there's all of these other problems. And it's because all of their hours were kind of spent in these other areas. And then they also discovered that they're lonely. That, wealth can be isolating because of how we've structured it, when the name of the game is just how much I have, not how well are we doing as a society, when the only thing that matters is me, my money, my wealth, when that's the only thing, that's very, very isolating. It becomes harder to form new friends outside of your existing circle. And we're socially wired as human beings. We need each other. It is not a surprise that the highest form of torture in a prison, right? Like you do something wrong, you murder someone, you go to jail, but you do something really wrong in jail and they send you to solitary, right? And so great wealth is isolating, right? Which again, humans aren't wired to like. And so, it creates kind of all of these problems. And so I love your thinking around the subject of pre-luxury.
Yeah.
And how do we start happy? How do we end happy? And I think it relates to part of our mission at Myria, which is how do we form a new set of goals? How do we change the idea of the age, the zeitgeist around what success looks like? Because as long as success is solely the number of dollars in your bank account, a lot of people are going to be very, very unhappy.
I also think that confidence comes from trying a lot of stuff, right? Because I have made so many mistakes, but I don't make a mistake and try to bury it. I make a mistake, I own it, I learn from it, and I make sure it doesn't happen again. And so you start to build confidence. And it's important for, again, especially women in business to understand that very rarely is it about you. Very rarely are people watching in the way that you imagine they might be watching you. And so I have kind of taken that very much to heart. Like, I don't take things personally. I don't think if a decision I made ends up being the wrong decision, that I'm bad, that was like wrong of me. I'm like, that thing didn't work. Oh, well, on to the next one. It's like, I don't let it become something that like stifles me. And so I have a lot of audacity and that's fine. It's just working.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a big difference as well between self-worth and just kind of believing that you always do the right thing. It's like when you say you might not do the right thing, but that doesn't necessarily affect how you see yourself or whether you think you're a good person. I do think that's something that everyone really needs to work to build. And I think you especially need to work to build it more if you didn't necessarily have parents who kind of said, no, stand on your own 2 feet and like back yourself and all of those things. I think it's a really important thing to build, trusting yourself and trusting your decisions and trusting the fact that if your decisions aren't right, that doesn't affect who you are, how people should treat you, how you should treat yourself, all of it. And I think that's a tough distinction to have.
It is tough, but I think that you make a lot of bad decisions. Like if your job is solely making decisions all day, which is what mine is, you're going to lose some. Some of them will be bad. No one has 100% kind of, hit rate. Like, I don't expect to be perfect. It's a very, very interesting trait and a way that we're living, like this idea of perfectionism, like that you have to be so perfect. And I just don't think I need to be.